This is Dayna with Novels Live TV, and I have Jon Land here today. And you have got this awesome book that I started reading on the plane. And your hero is a heroine.
She is.
How is it to write a woman instead of a man?
You know, I think if you know your people, if you know your characters, you can write anything. I'm not a serial killer. I've written about plenty of them. I'm not a special forces commando. I've written about plenty of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a Palestinian, and a Palestinian was the hero of a whole series of books that I did. You write from the imagination. You write from your heart, and that's where your characters come from. If you only wrote characters that you knew yourself, you would be able to write one book, and it probably wouldn't be very good.
It wouldn't be a bestseller, that's for darn sure.
No, it definitely wouldn't be a bestseller.
Well, I would think that it'd be a little interesting because I assume the other characters were men.
Mm-hmm. Most
So
of them.
the perspective, I mean, do you have a wife, a mother, a sister, somebody who helps you kind of understand a little bit more how a woman would do things?
If I needed that kind of understanding, I would have failed already, because it has to be instinctive.
Mm-hmm.
The character has to come alive in your own head, and if you hand this thing to someone and say, does this really sound like a woman? One of the criticisms that I've occasionally gotten for the two Kaitlyn Strong books, Strong Enough to Die and now Strong Justice, is that some people, mostly Amazon reviewers, have said, she's too much like a man. Well, she's a Texas Ranger.
I was going to say.
And she is first and foremost a Texas Ranger. She's a fifth generation Texas Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
So if she has abilities and strengths and thinks in battle sequences and action scenes the way a man would, that's because she wants to stay alive. It's not because she's not a full, well-rounded woman. But you are what you do only to an extent. Kaitlyn is a woman who happens to be a Texas Ranger. She could just as easily be a school teacher.
But
she would be the same person.
Stories. She heard the stories growing up, sitting on her grandpa's lap,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what
Great
she grew up with. So why would she know anything different? That's what she knows.
Well, the key thing in doing exactly what you just described is that there's never been a female Texas Ranger, not to the level of what we know of the Texas Rangers. Administrative personnel, women have gone through the training. It's a male-dominated society. In writing a book about the first female, Robert Louis Stevenson once wrote, "It doesn't matter to me if you believe what I'm writing is true. What matters to me is that you do not disbelieve it," the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
To create credibility for my character, I made her a fifth-generation Ranger, with her father and grandfather both being legends in their own times. That explains why she is so readily accepted into this male-dominant society.
Right.
Because she was around it since birth, so the men accept her.
Well, and that's what I like how you talk about that in the book. And so, to me, it's not unreasonable to think that she would think the way that she does as a real Texas Ranger, whether she's woman or man.
There's only one way a Ranger thinks. A man might think differently than a woman. A man and a woman might approach situations differently. But a Texas Ranger only approaches them one way. And that's what she is.
And what's so wrong with having a tough woman? I mean, are there not tough women out there?
Here's the thing. Thrillers are the most popular form of fiction. 75% of all books are bought by women.
Yes.
But I defy anyone to name me, up until Kaitlyn Strong, a female action hero. Not a mystery. I'm talking about a gun-toting woman who does traditionally male things. A female Jack Reacher, a female Mitch Rapp, Vince Flynn, Lee Child, Mitch Rapp. You know, Novels Alive has interviewed David Morrell.
Yeah.
The great David Morrell, I might add. A female Rambo, in the sense of her skills, her abilities, and perhaps most importantly, her willingness to use violence. And I think that might be what some people will read and say, that's not a woman.
Well, they might even take offense. Well, women are just too soft-hearted.
I find that to be sexist.
I agree.
I think for me to have toned her down or to have compromised her would have been for me to say a woman is less of a person or has less skills than a man. Sure, when you're having a fight scene with a 6'5" guy, and you've got a 5'8" woman who probably is outweighed by 100 pounds, that's one thing.
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But a 6 hour, 226, those 13 bullets, those 13 9mm shells that the Rangers carry, they don't know any difference at all. And you'll see more and more in Strong Justice, and also the next one, Strong at the Break. Kaitlyn considers herself, as almost all Rangers still do, as a gunfighter. Not a gunman, because that would be a gunwoman, but a gunfighter. And she has that mentality. Not a martial artist, not a commando, not a special forces operative, a gunfighter. And the great thing about spending time around the Rangers is you learn the mindset of Rangers. I was with a Ranger once at a firing range, and someone else walked by, I think he was a local cop, don't want to mention the precinct. And he was carrying a .45. It wasn't his carry gun, because they don't carry .45s, but he was a target gun. And he was carrying in a holster, the way I would carry it, as an amateur, pistol shooter. The Ranger looks at him and just shakes his head, and I said, "What's wrong?" He goes, "Man's carrying his .45 with the hammer down. No gunfighter ever does that because you can't fire the gun. You have to rack the slide of a .45. There's no good bullet. It is in the chamber, unless you have the hammer cut." So when a Ranger, and for many, many years, the model 1911 Springfield .45 was the Ranger carry weapon. And they always carried it hammer back. Because that way when you draw, you can fire. So the mindset of Kaitlyn Strong is the mindset of Wyatt Earp and Wild Bill Hickok. And the amazing thing about doing these books, many amazing things, but perhaps the most amazing, is learning that this mentality among Marine Corps snipers, Special Forces operatives, Texas Rangers, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, that gunfighter mentality still exists. And with the Rangers, it needs to. In the olden days, there were anywhere between 110 and 140 Rangers. There are now 100. A few more. They're adding more because they're sending them down to the Texas border, but no more than 150. They're still responsible for these huge swatches of Texas territory. That hasn't changed. They're the only law for hundreds of square miles. Now and what's the difference? They drive an SUV instead of ride a horse.
Well, now, so you did go to Texas.
I did.
And you visited with people. And see, I lived there for 7 years. I lived in Dallas. It's a different mentality. It is a different mentality. It's just, I lived in the West all my life. And Texas was the farthest east I've ever lived.
This is a very good point.
Yeah. And they're just different. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just different.
I've never discussed this in an interview before, but I'm a Northeasterner. And I don't know any statistics, but I've heard statistics in the past of the percentage of books purchased from Washington north to New York onto Boston into New England. It's very, very high. So us Northeast, we have a certain mindset and a certain perspective. And it's very difficult sometimes for liberal Northerners, of which I would count myself one,
Sure.
to understand the mindset of Southern states and the gun mentality of the frontier, because this is the point. Kaitlyn Strong comes from a tradition. We're a very small number of people. We're defending huge numbers of settlers and pioneers from the Indians coming down from the north and the Mexican bandits coming up from the south.